Hi everyone, I'm Aimone Bodini. I'm a filmmaker and I worked on several video productions in the last 3 years, and since 2 years I've been struck by a new technology that I've also found out that is also a new medium to convey emotions and to communicate. And since then I've tried to, explore and discover this new world. I was still studying, I was graduating when I decided to focus my final thesis on VR storytelling, and my goal was to sort of decode the VR language in order to create better contents. More than 120 years ago, cinema was born, and since then we learned even in a subconscious way, how to understand how to this medium became mature and adult. So I want to do an experiment with you. What's this? This is a long shot. What's this? This is a full shot, an American shot, and a close-up. We all know the differences between these two, between these shots, because we are simply used to them. We all born with these 2D images all around us, so we perfectly know their meaning. And the thing is that, what's about the VR language? What's about VR storytelling? It's not something deeply rooted as cinema, as the cinematic language. And what's about VR storytelling? I mean, I'd prefer to step back and ask myself, can we still tell stories in VR? The reason is simple, it's not trivial, it's simple, but the thing is that there are many revolutionary concepts in VR. For instance, there is no more, the frame is gone. So it's something that it's, in my opinion, revolutionary, because it's a centenary concept, photography, painting. So it's okay to ask ourselves if we can still tell stories in VR. And in my opinion, yes, we can. Otherwise I wouldn't be here today. But our approach has to be very different. We have to think before, creating contents and reproducing before creating contents. And I think that today nobody knows how to tell stories in VR, or at least nobody can tell you, if you want to tell a story in VR, do this, this, and this. And that's not my approach. So I'm here today just to share my vision, but without saying that the VR language is this, and this. And when I started my research, I started with some questions, but more I started to investigate, more I started to research, I found out many more questions, and that's why it's exciting, because that means that there is still a lot to discover, still a lot to do. As I told you, I was still in a film school. I was graduating, and I didn't have the technical resources to create VR or the experience on the field. So what I could do was to develop a critical thinking on VR. Other people decided to start creating contents, but as any new technologies, they started to produce without thinking too much, in my opinion. What I see today out there are many VR short film, VR music videos, VR commercials, but the thing is that they are just the transposition of this traditional media in a 360 space. They are using the same rules, the same language of the previous media. And many people are committed to push the technical aspect of VR. They are talking about eye tracking, they are talking about display resolution, frame rate, but we don't have to forget about the medium. But don't get me wrong, technology is very important and goes hand in hand with the language. Let's take a look at the past. Early filmmakers like Georges Méliès or the Lumière brothers, they started using these huge and heavy cameras, and so they decided to put them on a tripod, and what you get was a static shot. That was the language of the time. But later on in the 50s and 60s, when technology developed new solutions like 16mm camera that you could end with, that could be, you could end easily. Well, also the language changed a lot. In particular, the French nouvelle vague was a breakpoint with the cinema of the past. We were used to see smooth and fluid movements, but what they did is to use the camera like a pen, and so also the language changed. So now let's think about VR. For instance, let's talk about the degrees of freedom. There are two kinds of headsets today. Those that allows you to have 3 degrees of freedom and those that allows you to have 6 degrees of freedom. HTC Vive on one side and Gear VR or cardboard mobile headsets. This is a GIF that I found on the internet. I mean, just to explain you better what's the difference between a 360 video and virtual reality. In one case, you can move in the space. In the other one, you're just turning your head and you're seeing, what you're seeing is a sort of, spherical projection of the space. And so how the different degrees of freedom affects the VR language, affects VR storytelling. This, I Expect You to Die, it's a VR puzzle game, but with a good amount of storytelling in it. And it's cool because you are a secret agent, you are in a car, and at a particular moment, what you see is you have been recognized as an intruder, and they want to, kill you with a laser beam. Okay. This guy is using the PSVR that has 6 degrees of freedom, and game designers decided to exploit this feature. Okay, so when the laser beam is going to kill you, you can avoid it just moving your head. And I found this particularly interesting because it's something that you cannot do with, for instance, a mobile headset, and it's something that empower the storytelling. They were aware of the technology, and they exploited these 6 degrees of freedom technology. But we can also talk about the field of view of the headsets. As you know, many headsets on the market got something like 100 degree of horizontal field of view, even if there are prototypes like the Star VR that got more than 200 degrees. And when you get this huge and wide field of view, you can play with the peripheral vision much more than with the headsets that got something like 100 degrees or 90 degrees of field of view. Let's take a look at these sisters. And the cool thing is that it's a horror experience, and you are inside this, this room, and it's pretty scary. And on the television, you get this face that appears only when the television is on your, on the side, on the peripheral vision. And imagine if you can do this with a headset with a much wider field of view. It could be, you could do many things and exploit the technology. This is another example. 6x9 is an experience where they use the same technique in order to sort of give you hallucinations. As you can see, when you are trying to, focus on these ghosts, I'd say, on these ghosts disappear. So it's clear how technology and language goes hand in hand. So it's something that we don't have to forget, but at the same time, we don't have to forget about the medium. We have to find a balance between the two. That's why before creating VR contents, VR experiences, we should ask ourselves to tell our stories. Is VR the best medium we can use? Which benefits our story will gain from the adoption of this medium, which are the limitations? And as you can see, different mediums got different potentials. And once again, as I told you, what I've seen today, what I see today are many experiences that are just the transposition of the previous media. They don't take advantage of the features and characteristics of VR. And that's something we should change as creators. We should be more aware of what we can do with VR, and we also should be more aware of the other media. And that's the reason why we should also study other medium to understand why VR is different. And at the same time, studying other media would allow us to take inspirations from these other media. That's why I was saying that theater is very important to VR, in my opinion. We can also take inspiration from architecture. Of course, I've compared the VR language to the cinematic language more than once, because they are related, they are connected. But the thing is that our approach has to be different. We can just take these techniques, these rules of the previous media, and just put it in VR. Think about the movement. We use the cinematic movement to convey specific emotions. Why? I don't know why. Anyway, this is the opening scene of The Godfather. There is a sort of, it's not a dolly movement actually, it's an electronic zoom, but the thing is that we start with Buonasera, with a close-up of Buonasera, and little by little we get farther and farther, and we reveal the scene. We will see Don Corleone, Marlon Brando on the side. So it's something that convey strong emotions when you move the camera towards or farther from your subject. You can create more empathy with him, or if you get farther, you leave him alone. Or you can also give a lot of energy and dynamism. This is the opening scene of City of God, and as you can see, the camera is very shaky and is giving you this sense of energy, of dynamism. But what if you do a camera movement in VR? Good luck. I mean, I guess that you already know the motion sickness problem and the difficult to achieve a smooth and fluid camera movement in VR. And I'm still wondering what's the meaning of a camera movement in VR, because actually you are not moving. So I'm still wondering what's the point of using a movement in VR. Maybe it's a way to go to the scene It's a way to proceed through the story. One of the best examples is given by Pearl. How many of you have seen Pearl? It's a great piece, and the cool thing is that creators decided to put you in a car, and you follow the story of the father and the daughter and his daughter when they are driving through the highways. Being inside the car allows you to change the scene and discover different places, different environments, and because you are inside the car, you also got this what I call a reference frame, and is very helpful to don't you get sick. So I think that they have been very smart because used the car both as storytelling tools and both as a tool to avoid motion sickness. So this is an example that I found particularly interesting when we talk about VR movements. And as I told you, I found also particularly important to study other media, like theater, for instance, because theater directors are used to think, with 360 space in mind. When they are placing the actors, they think spatially. And also, what they study is proxemics. Proxemics is a discipline that have been discovered and studied by the anthropologist Edward Hall. And what he says is that depending on the distance that people between each other, you can define their relationship level, and it's one of the most powerful storytelling tools, proxemics, in my opinion, in VR. And how many of you have seen Hurry? Hurry uses these techniques. This is just the trailer. It's not the final piece, but even in the trailer, you can get this thing of the proxemics. In the beginning of the experience, you see Henry coming towards you. You want to be your friend, and he's a cute hedgehog. So the feeling you got is, you are building, you are connecting with him. You feel empathy with him. At the same, also in the trailer, you got this other movement. This time, Henry decided to step back and, turn his head, his body. And now what you feel are different emotions. Henry is in the distance, and you are sad for him, or you got different emotions. Proxemics is also used by filmmakers. Within produced this piece that is catatonic, and in this case, we changed the nature of the characters. It's no more a cute hedgehog, but are scaring characters all around you, coming very close to you. So you got different emotions. You have always to keep in mind the distance you want to the character is keeping with you, but also the nature of this character, because I don't think that he's going to be my friend, even if he's this close to me. This is Clouds Over Sidra, another fantastic example. Explored a refugee camp in Jordan, and at the end of the experience, you see all these kids coming all around you, and I can swear you that the emotion, the feeling that you perceive, that you have, is very strong, and is using the proxemics techniques to empower the storytelling and empower the scene. This is also My Brother's Keeper, a more recent piece, and as you can see, there's a soldier that is coming. This is the opening scene, and you instantly recognize in this soldier as your main character. Did you remember the shots, the close-up, the long shot that I showed you in the first place? Well, I'm wondering if maybe proxemics can be the translation of, the close-up, the long shot, the full shot. Depending on the distance, you will convey more or less the same emotions that you convey when you are using a close-up in cinema or a full shot. It's something that I found very interesting to, explore further. I'm also particularly interested in architecture and interior design because VR is an immersive medium. So the space around us matters a lot. And I'm also reading, recently I started to read a book that put in relation neuroscience and architecture. And what he says, I'm not an architect or a neuroscientist, but what he says more or less is that there is a deep connection, a deep connection on a deep level, on a brain level, between the architecture and the way you feel in that space. As I told you, I'm not a neuroscientist, but if we are using an immersive medium as VR, we should pay much more attention to our 360 space. And I'm not just talking about, I'm not talking about only about CGI experiences, but also when we are creating a 360 video, we have to pay attention at the set design and build the scene all around us, not just in one direction, in my opinion, and keeping in mind that we are using an immersive medium. So architecture and interior design, these are other two media that I would like to, study more, because I think that can help us to create better contents. And let's take a look at an experience that is very interesting from this point of view. I expect you to die. As I told you, you're in a car. The game designer decided to let you to put you sit in the car. You cannot move, and in order to engage more the user, the player, they decided to build a 360 space, paying attention also at on your back. You got a lot of interactions, a lot of objects. All the space around you is interesting and engaging, and this is one of the most, successful, in my opinion, example of how interior design and architecture can help you to improve a lot your experience. As I told you, as you know, another thing that's extremely important, that is revolutionary, is this concept of frame. We born with all these 2D images enclosed in a frame, boundaries, and we based hundreds of years on this concept, starting from painting, then photography, and then cinema. What you see is a traditional photo. You see the frame. And now this is virtual reality and also reality. This is an rectangular version of a 360 photo, and if you are in VR, you can see all the, you perfectly know, you are immersed in a 360 space. Wherever you look, there is something to look at. And this is what is scaring many film directors, because you are no more in control, because the viewer can easily look wherever he wants, and if you are building the scene in a particular direction, he is free to look on the opposite direction and lose the story. So how can you be sure that your viewer is looking at the story? How can you drive his attention? Well, there are a few tools we can use. We can use traditional tools like different size, like different colors, like highlighting particular object, particular subjects, and we can also use graphic elements. These tools are already used in traditional advertising, but what and this is an example of light. This buggy night is an experience produced by Google Spotlight, and you are wrapped by darkness. You are in this 360 space. There is no light except for a flashlight, and it's something that, and you tend to follow this light. It's something that is attracting your attention, your eyes. So somehow you are driving the user with the use of this flashlight. But we can also use VR tools specific of the VR medium. We can take advantage of, for instance, the spatial audio. If I hear something, if I hear a glass falling and breaking behind me, I tend to look behind, looking for the audio source, looking for the glass. And this is extremely important also to drive the user attention in a 360 space. There is also the character gaze. In VR, let me show you this. In VR, if we see a character looking on a particular portion of the space, we tend to look in the same direction. As you can see, this guy is is looking in that direction, and I tend to look in the same direction. And we can also use diegetic UI. You remember the graphic elements? Well, you can do something similar in VR. This is a video game called Metro 2033, and the UI is totally diegetic. Your menu, your menu, and all the informations you need to proceed through the story are implemented in the game. And I found this particularly interesting because it's a good way to don't break the immersion. Okay, when I'm in VR, I don't want to see arrows or stuff like that floating in the air. I'd like to see something implemented in the game. And our eyes are also attracted by movement. Our ancestors, when they were in the savannah or when they were, hunting, they had to pay particular attention to objects moving, because it could be a prey or it could be a predator. So it's something deeply rooted in our, organism. It's something biological. And in VR, if you are in a space, if you are in a static scene and there is only one object moving, I'll tend to focus on this object, and this object will also drive my attention. Actually, this is not Colosse, this is senza peso. Is an experience. As you can see, there are these, I don't know how to name it, sources of light, and the user tends to look in the same at these lights and follow their movements around him. But even if you are using all these tools, you are not sure. The user is always free to look around. Okay, you are trying to drive his attention, but you cannot be sure at 100%. Another technique could be the real-time storytelling. Real-time storytelling, it's something that you can achieve using graphic engines. This is, we are inside Unity. On one side we got our scene, on the other side we got the complicated event system that allows the software to always know where the user is looking at. He knows if he's looking at the hunter or at the crab, and it's very useful to storytelling, because could be a way, with real-time storytelling, we can build the story depending on where the user is looking at. So let's take a look at this example. Depending on where, okay, at some point in the experience you hear a loud sound coming from behind, is this giant monster, this giant colosse, and depending on where you turn your head on your left or your right, you will see the fourth step of this colosse on your left or your right. It's a little change, okay, in the story. It's something that you decided, even if you don't know that, you decided how to proceed to the story. Did you get it? I mean, it's I'm the storyteller, and I like to summarize this concept of real-time storytelling using this sentence. I want you to tell me the story as I want to hear it. It's something like, did you ever played the Stanley Parable? It's a game, a funny game that is very smart, and depending on the choices that you do, you create different stories. I mean, there is one creator actually decided to build different paths. There is a sort of ramification, so you can experience multiple stories, and is very engaging for the user, for the player. And you can do something similar with in VR, even if, as you can imagine, it requires much more effort because you have to create multiple stories. And hopefully in the next weeks I'll be able to publish with the World VR Forum a book that's the result of my research during these, well, 2 years, 1 year and a half on VR storytelling. It's a book that I hope that you may find interesting and can help you to better understand how VR works, how the VR language works, but in particular, what I want to tell you is that we have to change our approach. We cannot just put the camera and press the button and, you know, do things like we always did. We are experimenting a new medium with different rules. We have to be aware that many techniques, many rules we used in the past, well, need adjustments. They cannot be translated instantly. We have to think about it. So with my work, I've just, you know, scratched the tip of the iceberg. There is still a lot to do, a lot to discover, a lot to explore, and I think that is necessary a common effort between, not just between filmmakers and game designers and developers, 3D artists, but also we need the help from anthropologists, neuroscientists, psychologists, architects, designers, in order to create better contents and to push the VR medium forward. So that's why I like to end with this quote of myself. So that's it. Thank you.